What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Okay, a long time coming. I always wanted to tell the story of how Austin got to where he was. Just never found the right time, but it finally won the poll yesterday, and those things, like, you guys say they were sort of rigged in a way, like the first choice always wins. Well, I don't got any other platform to do these choices. I mean, you guys want it on Twitter or something? I don't know. But that's the only thing I can do at the moment. That's how I just determine whatever video I want to make for that day. So, yeah. Now, I will make more Attitude Era content, such as the history of the hardcore title, something about D'Lo Brown and Val Venus, hell, something about lower card guys. Will probably come this week if I'm busy with a certain video, which I did mention in the past, but if I am busy with it, then you should expect one or hell even two of those this week. Anyways, Fang McFrost, this guy burst the scene from out of nowhere. He was already known as an in-ring technician of sorts, a ringmaster of sorts. That's how great Steve Austin was in the ring previously. WCW relied on him to put great matches. He was one of the workhorses of the company, and he was seen as someone they could potentially groom for the world title. Keyword potentially. But it never materialized. Why? Well, some people came into the company and everything changed and everything was a massive mess, I guess. He started to lose focus. He lacked motivation and was eventually fired while sidelined with an injury. Overnight, he turned into this bitter guy who wanted to show the company down in Atlanta what they were missing out on. At least that's what it looked like to me. While they were missing out on a talent like Austin, I don't think anyone expected him to turn out like he did. Anyways, stunning Steve Austin, Stone Cold, all of that stuff. Let's get into it. Steven James Anderson, better known as Stone Cold Steve Austin, was born on December 18th, 1964 in Victoria, Texas. Austin ended up changing his last name to his stepfather's, becoming Steve Williams after his father left, I believe. He attended Edna High School and he even received a football scholarship to play at a community college. Eventually, he worked his way up to receive a full scholarship from the University of North Texas. Williams was a defensive end and he majored in physical education. He was aiming to be a PE teacher, but his goal wasn't to be, as he fell only a few credits short. Following college, Williams worked at a loading dock, which got me speculating that maybe, just maybe, he loaded beer. Eventually, he turns on the TV and finds out that gentleman, Chris Adams, is opening a wrestling school. So he goes there and learns the ropes. After 5 months, he debuts in World-Class Championship Wrestling. He wasn't making much during the early part of his career as expected, $25, $40. And in his book, Austin literally states he was unaware of wrestling. Like, he didn't know much about it and he had yet to smarten up. Like, sure, he was a fan of it previously. His favorite wrestler is Ric Flair. But he wasn't knowledgeable about what happened backstage and all that stuff. And eventually he did learn, and he believed Chris Adams was a con man. He was lying about getting him into WCW, forcing him to wrestle at his shows despite being scheduled to wrestle elsewhere. And he broke his relationship with his teacher a while later and started to wrestle in the USWA. And in Memphis, it was actually Dutch Mantel that coined the name Steve Austin. Hell, he even suggested Austin add stunning to the front if he ever becomes a heel. He did that eventually, but before he did, he feuded with his old trainer, Chris Adams. At this point, Austin was managed by Jeannie Adams, who was formerly Chris's wife, and he even had Percy Pringle, Paul Bear, be his manager down in Dallas. Austin's performances caught WCW's eye and they signed him to a contract. Upon signing with the company, he was paired with a valet, but only a couple of weeks later, they brought in Jeannie and called her Lady Blossom. Right out of the gate, Austin captured the WCW World Television Championship and was paired with Paul E. Dangerously in his Dangerous Alliance. He was billed as being from Hollywood, California, which eventually came into play with his next run. Austin held that title for nearly a year and he held it for 329 days before losing it to Barry Windham in a 2 out of 3 falls match in April of 1992. Austin, however, recaptured that title only to lose it to Ricky Steamboat a couple of months later at Clash of the Champions 20. Following this, the Dangerous Alliance ceased to exist and Austin began teaming up with Brian Pillman because creative had nothing for them. This was when Stunning Steve began to shine. Along with Flying Brian, the duo were known as the Hollywood Blondes, and they captured the NWA/WCW Tag Team Championships from the team of Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas. Many seen them as perhaps the most entertaining thing on the show. They were doing this little camera thing, they wore all whites, and they had tremendous chemistry. The duo took shortcuts whenever they could, and their first feud as champions was with the Four Horsemen after the Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas thing. On the May 15th, 1993 episode of WCW Saturday Night, Ric Flair invited the duo to his talk show. Throughout the segment, Austin and Pillman were pretty rude. They insulted Flair's age and they believed that the Horsemen wouldn't stand a chance with the team of the 90s themselves. Double A had enough of these insults and wanted to take action, and Flair himself, he was calm and composed for only a couple of seconds because he took his jacket off and he was ready to fight. Eventually, this led to Flair's in-ring return because he had just returned from the WWF, but beforehand, the Blondes mocked Flair's talk show. You know, it's called A Flair for the Gold. With their own spoof, it was called A Flair for the Old. The funny thing about this is the fact that they were calling Flair old back then. Like, as a kid, I've always heard people say, oh, Flair's old or something like that. Yet this was in 1993, and they were calling him old. 30 years. 30 years, yeah, guys were calling Flair old. The fans loudly chanted, "We want Flair," and Stunning Steve was Arn Anderson. The real Arn Anderson heard enough and whacked Stunning Steve. Freaking Pillman's using the lady as a shield, and it erupted. As for the tag match at Clash of the Champions, it was Flair's first match back in WCW, and the 4 men delivered in that 2 out of 3 falls match. It was for the titles, by the way. Despite the loss, the Blondes retained the titles due to the disqualification from Barry Windham, who interfered and attacked Flair, meaning the titles don't change hands. By the way, they lost 2-0. Unfortunately for the Blondes, they were shining, but just when they were hitting their stride, the fans were connecting with them, everything like that. Pillman suffered an ankle injury, leaving Austin to team up with Lord Steven Regal at Clash of the Champions 24. They lost the titles, and Austin was left without an actual tag team partner. Upon Pillman's return, he found out Austin's got a new manager by the name of Colonel Robert Parker, and before he knew it, Austin went after that bad ankle, meaning the Hollywood Blondes was no more. Now, many people dislike their feud as it wasn't really much, and they believed it lacked intensity and the fact that it was more about Parker and Pillman rather than Pillman and Austin. Despite this, things were somewhat bright for Stunning Steve Austin. The company began pushing him as a single star, and at Starrcade 1993, Stunning Steve Austin captured the coveted WCW United States Heavyweight Championship from Dustin Rhodes. He beat him 2 straight falls, although it was Dustin who cost himself, because he got DQ'd in the first fall, and the second fall saw him lose focus to give way to Austin. He held that title for 7 months and went through the likes of the Great Muta, Dustin Rhodes, and Ricky Steamboat. Once again, though, ended up being Steamboat himself who ended a Austin title reign, and from there, well, it was starting to fall apart for him in WCW. Sure, he won back the title, but that was via forfeit, and he's all happy at this point. He's gonna leave Fall Brawl with the title, but it was revealed that Steamboat had a replacement. He's trying to convince Bockwinkel otherwise, but then he ran into a backdrop and lost the title in 30 seconds to Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Following this, Austin wasn't the same. His push was gone. He started to get bitter, and one day, while injured, this was in June of 1995, I believe, the company called Austin's home to inform him to come to TV and cut a promo. Austin's wife answered the phone, and someone, not sure who it was, I believe it was Tony Schiavone, heard Steve in the background shouting, "Tell them I'm not home." Coupled with the fact that he was somewhat injury-prone in their eyes, not marketable, WCW thought they should cut Austin off his $300,000 contract. On the phone, Bischoff told Austin he wouldn't amount to anything, and in his eyes, it wasn't a manly move. He expressed dissatisfaction with his spot on the card, and I even saw a rumor that Hogan said Austin can't draw money, keyword rumor. So now he's gone, and at this point, it was September of 1995. What does Austin do next? Well, before I talk about this, let me list some things the company, WCW, or the guys there, promised Austin. A singles run with Harley Race as his manager. That didn't happen. Instead, he was in a tag team. The tag got over massively with the fans, so they decided to keep them a bit grounded and halt their momentum in a way. Next, a feud between Flair and himself, perhaps, for the title. And all of that didn't happen. He had some sort of resentment for Flair and Dusty initially, but over time it went away. He was like, oh, it doesn't matter. As for his next move, Extreme Championship Wrestling. It was there where Austin showed just how great he was on the mic. It felt like he had a point to prove. And this promo in itself was the most notable one. He's talking about how every idea is shot down. Me and Stink. No. Me and Hogan. I could be his brother from the past or something like that. No. Me and Bryan. Again. Nope. He's doing a Dusty impression, and all of these promises of pushing him to the moon never came to fruition. Seriously, if you've never watched this promo, what are you waiting for? At one point, he even said that WCW kept the biggest star in the world on the damn ground. He spoke it into existence, basically. Now, this ECW run wasn't expected to last long. I don't know what to say. I'm not sure if it was Austin who improved immensely, or did he just show what he was capable of? I'm not sure which one it is. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, they were very interested in Austin. In an interview with Austin himself on the Broken Skull sessions, Bret Hart revealed that he had a hand in helping Austin sign with the WWF. And I quote, "I remember talking about you, Austin. I think you just signed with ECW, and I said, why don't you guys grab Steve Austin? He was free. He was available. I said, you're looking for new guys all the time, and he was one of the best guys down there, and they just let him go with WCW. And I said, I don't know why you didn't grab him, and I talked to Vince about it, and I remember the next week you were sitting in the dressing room." So there it is. Now, it wasn't solely Bret Hart that brought Austin to the WWF. I believe Kevin Nash and Jim Ross also asked Vince to hire Austin, so he obliged, basically. Now, Austin, he was about to sign with All Japan Pro Wrestling, and if I remember correctly, I read this while making the video, they were gonna have him be their top champion, basically. He never went there because the pay was much better, the salary in WWF, I believe. Anyways, on the January 8th, 1996 episode of Raw, Ted DiBiase came out to reveal who was going to be the $1 million champion. He searched and searched and searched for the right guy, and now he's found him. And out he came. The Ringmaster. He seemed like a whole different person compared to the Steve Austin of ECW. He made his in-ring debut the following week, defeating a jobber by the name of Matt Hardy. At the Royal Rumble, Austin was supposed to make it to the Final Four during the namesake match, but freaking baby oil got in the way. He was hanging onto the ropes, but they were too slippery, and out he went. Slowly, that Ringmaster name was phased out. Austin shaved his head. He didn't wear white boots anymore, and he began calling himself Stone Cold Steve Austin on the March 11th, 1996 episode of Raw. First time ever. Now, you guys probably know the story about how he's thinking of names and they gave him like Chill McFreeze, wherever the hell that is. And his wife at the time told him to drink his tea because it's going to get stone cold. Yeah, you guys know that. I just mentioned it once again. They gave him this dark music. He adopted the $1 Million Dream as a finisher, and he had some underrated matches with Savio Vega. Their Caribbean strap match was pretty fun. Ted DiBiase was so confident that Austin's winning that he'll forfeit his career in the WWF. Savio ended up winning, which I find funny because this guy was a future WWF champion. And this meant DiBiase was gone. He moved to WCW, where he started to manage the newly formed New World Order. Following this, Stone Cold Steve Austin participated in the 1996 King of the Ring tournament. In the round of 16, he faced Bob Holly, and he forced him to tap out to the $1 Million Dream. In the quarterfinal, he faced Savio Vega once again, and he had a maneuver that ended up being called the Stone Cold Stunner to reach the semi-final. At the pay-per-view, Austin defeated Wildman Mark Mero to punch his ticket in the final. The match was pretty competitive and it would have gone either way since Mero had just signed with the company. Heading into his match with Stone Cold, Jake Roberts wasn't exactly 100% after his match with Vader. Austin had a moment with his old friend Brian Pillman, and despite Roberts having some fight in him, Austin was just too much. Owen was providing commentary, which was funny throughout the night, and Austin once again hit that stunner to win the 1996 King of the Ring. Not if you know, you know, but Hunter Hearst Helmsley was initially going to win it, but the MSG Click incident put him in the doghouse for several months, and that gave way to Austin. He then went up for an interview with Doc Hendricks, and I think we all know what he said. Austin 316 says, "I just whooped your ass." He sent a message to the entire WWF roster, and he didn't give a damn if it was Davey Boy or HBK, he's coming for that title. Now, one thing to know is that he wasn't out there every week due to the promo at the time, keyword. Hell, he wasn't even on the main card of SummerSlam. He faced Yokozuna during the free-for-all. In September of 1996, Stone Cold Steve Austin began calling out one Bret the Hitman Hart. At this point, Hitman was contemplating retirement in storyline, and Austin believed the moment he stepped into the WWF, Hart ran back to Canada. And if you put the letter S in front of Hitman, that's exactly his opinion on him. The Stone Cold character started to come into his own. The head bobs, the catchphrase, the brawling. Like, he wasn't wrestling those technician stuff. He wasn't doing that anymore. He was just simply put a brawler. And basically, a superstar started to emerge. Over the next month, Austin continued to knock on Bret's door. He was ready to go in there and whack Bret's father if he has to get the match. Eventually, it was announced that Bret was set to return for the October 20th episode of Raw. And a little side note, if you're probably wondering when Austin debuted his famous theme song, I believe it was In Your House Buried Alive. Upon the Hitman's return, he challenged Stone Cold to a match at Survivor Series. Before the match, however, Austin assaulted his friend Brian Pillman. He added insult to injury to his already injured knee, and he promised to pay a visit to his friend the following week. Now, this promo in particular, damn, he was ready to give his best friend a house call. Vince tried reasoning with him, but he just gave no damn. He made fun of Brian's raspy voice. He was irritated with Vince's stupid questions. He even acknowledged Vince as the boss of the company, which was something they never really did beforehand. Austin even called Vince a greedy man for not even trying to punish him for his actions. Because Vince was asking, like, why wouldn't Gorilla Monsoon punish you? And Austin was like, you're the boss. You could just do it yourself. Later that night, Austin threw the production assistant into a ladder, showing just how crazy he was. And if that wasn't enough, he tried breaking into Pillman's house the following week, but he was met with a freaking gun. That moment in itself is a pivotal moment in the creation of the Attitude Era in a way, because a gun on WWF, unusual, simply put. And Pillman was cussing during the original broadcast, and they had to apologize in order to remain on USA Network. That's how crazy it was. As for the match at Survivor Series, so damn sublime. I really enjoyed watching this one. Bret didn't show much ring rust, and as a matter of fact, it was one of his best matches ever. Excellent match that complements the WrestleMania 13 bout, as the story was just getting heated up. Austin showed he belonged right in there with the Hitman, and if there's one match that I'd call Austin's coming out party, it's this one. WrestleMania 13 felt more like a star-making performance in my eyes. The $1 Million Dream during the match nearly got him the win, but Bret pulled a Bret and won with a roll-up. Austin, though, was ready to bounce back. How? Well, he was going to win the Royal Rumble. Upon his entry, he dominated. Everyone that came in his way, boom, right out of the ring. And at one point, he was looking at his watch. That's how bored he was. Sure, he had some competition and he was getting his ass kicked for a couple of minutes, but once he got it together, he threw out everyone. But then the pace picked up when the Hitman entered. Sure, there was competition, but none of them had Hart's fire. Obviously, Austin got his ass beat, and he managed to stay within the ring, however. Later on, Bret threw him out, but he realized none of the refs noticed. So Hart thought he had it in the bag, the Royal Rumble, but Austin was there to toss him right out to win the match. Bret tried protesting this loss, but the refs ignored his complaints. So in order to compensate, Gorilla Monsoon booked a Final Four for In Your House, namesake pay-per-view Final Four, between Bret, Austin, The Undertaker, and Vader. This was an elimination match, by the way, which I found confusing, but it was a good match nonetheless. Austin's win was already in the books, but his WrestleMania title shot was taken away and he was placed in this match. The match was pretty fun, so much drama, and last time I watched, I really enjoyed it. Hitman, with the help of Austin in a way, won the title. Unfortunately for him, Austin the next night used the chair to cost him the same piece of gold. Hart began blaming everyone for his misfortunes. And while most of his complaints were valid, he was a crybaby basically. The heated rivalry between Austin and Hart wasn't just going to be settled in a normal match, but an I Quit match. Ken Shamrock, straight out of UFC, was going to officiate the match. Austin at this point had so much damn intensity. The promos, amazing. This one, I love this one. This is one of my favorites. It makes me believe that 97 Stone Cold was probably the best iteration of his. Is it my favorite version? No, that goes to the 98 to 99 version. But this one, I can acknowledge this might be the best one. And he had a point to prove, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. Heading into WrestleMania, it was still up in the air whether or not Hart and Austin's match was going to be for the title. At one point, both Austin and Taker tried helping their WrestleMania opponents win the title during a steel cage match. Austin nearly helped Bret win the match, but Taker was there to blast that door right into the Hitman's face, giving way to Psycho Sid climbing out to retain his title. Bret then cut the promo of his career. He cussed out Vince. Austin in the back called Bret a loser, and Austin was this heel that didn't back down to challenges. That's why the fans liked him. He says who he is, but he doesn't run away from his problems. That's what I'm trying to say. He walked out there and brawled. Now, the match at WrestleMania 13 was simply put legendary. I can't stress it enough. Everyone knows it's a star-making match for Steve Austin. It was the blueprint for an Attitude Era main event, but despite that, none of the matches in the era that followed the formula ever topped it. Bret was fed up with being a pushover of sorts and took matters into his own hands. He wanted to regain the fans' love. He wanted to humble Austin and the hatred. You'd think they hated each other for real. Now, this match isn't overrated. It's properly rated. The storytelling, the psychology, the action, the drama, everything was there. Austin was being cheered despite being the outright villain. Bret was targeting the knee. Austin bleeding that blue steel chair. I watched it a couple of months ago and it still holds up. And the moment Bret locked him in the sharpshooter, that was it. The thing was locked in so damn tight, so Austin decided, to hell with quitting. I'll die trying to escape. And he was so damn close to escaping. Shamrock was the take no crap ref. Bret was hard-headed and he refused to let go. He had that thing stitched in tight, and he refused to let go until his music played, and that's exactly what happened when Austin passed out. He didn't tap out to the sharpshooter because he had too much pride in himself. The Chicago crowd certainly added to the match, and the fact that right after the match, Bret continued his assault, Shamrock had to slam him, not pull him away. The fans began booing Bret, and he started to flip some of them, officially turning into a bad guy for the first time in nearly 7 years. As for Austin, certified superstar, he refused to give up, and the loss turned him into a good guy with bad intentions in a way, I guess. He was the anti-hero. He refused to walk out with medical attention. He had the stunner on a damn referee, and he walked out with his own 2 legs. On his podcast a couple of years ago, Austin spoke about this match and how great it was. And I quote, "With all the flip-flop and the flying going on now, this match, although it was done at WrestleMania 13 all these years later, this match still holds up whether it was back then, right now, or in the future because of the physicality, because of the intensity," Austin said. "There's nothing crazy that goes on in this match, but because it's so real, it will hold up to the test of time." Now, that's why I like it. It wasn't flashy, but it felt real. I mean, I could watch spot fests, sure, and enjoy a lot of them, but I will always take storytelling over the latter. Anyway, Steve Austin in WCW could have been more prominent. Not saying world champion, although he could have been able to hold the gold eventually, but they just gave up on him at one point. The Hollywood Blonde thing was really working, but then they axed it. Injury thing, it was just bad luck, basically, for him. And the duo were having fun. Then he was fired via FedEx, which he doesn't mind nowadays, got motivated, and his only focus was succeeding. The Stone Cold character was a different kind from Stunning Steve at this point. He was a brawler that occasionally, this is pre-neck injury Austin, wrestled in those scientific type matches. Like that King of the Ring match with HBK, it was just about who's the better man, and that was off the charts for me, so yeah. Okay, this is where I'm going to have to end the video. I'll go into detail with Austin's career following WrestleMania 13 with the Hart Foundation, perhaps a Hart Foundation video. Yeah, I'll probably go into depth with that because he was feuding with them throughout the rest of 97 up until the Rocky feud, which you could go check out. There it is. So yeah, there it is. If you guys want Austin's title reign, that will be coming eventually, hopefully. In the meantime, you can check out this WrestleMania 14 Mike Tyson video that I made. I really enjoyed that one. It was fun. So yeah, that's your first video. Make sure you hit a stun gun on the like button and perhaps the stone cold stunner on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.